On the wall, the rule is simple. We do not look over the edge. It is printed on every hatch and bulkhead, stenciled in black across the inner face of the parapet, even engraved on the little metal plaques above the urinals. You cannot take a piss without being reminded to keep your eyes forward. I stood on Tower 7 with the wind grinding ice dust across my visor, thinking about how many times I had preached that line like it came from scripture. "Chaplain, your tether's loose again." Haz's voice crackled in my ear. I checked my harness. The anchor line clipped to the rail behind me had just enough slack that I could lean out to the parapet if I wanted, if I forgot the rule for one stupid heartbeat. I pulled the strap tighter. "Better?" I leaned back so he could see me on his visor feed. "Better," he grunted. "I am not watching you go over, Padre. I am not explaining that one to command." Sergeant Harry Mitchell was all hard angles in a frost-crusted armor shell, visor reflecting the blue-white wash from the tower floodlights. His squad moved along the wall behind him, shapes hunched against the cold, boots clanking on the cryosteel. Cryosteel is what they called the alloy that made up the wall, layered metal that stayed tough even when the temperature tried to kill it. The temperature was always trying to kill it. I checked the horizon again. On one side, toward the colony, the ice plain rose toward a low scatter of lights and heat plumes. On the other side, there was nothing, just the drop. A void so deep that the wall's search beams never reached bottom. Beyond that, the dark side of the moon, turned forever away from the gas giant that owned our sky. "Status, Tower 7? Control's voice slid into the shared channel. Flat, bored, the sound of someone in a warm room. "7 green," I answered. "No contacts, no anomalous readings. Patrol is returning to post." Routine phrases. I could recite them half asleep. Some nights I probably did. Chaplain Lieutenant Gabriel Mortimer, part-time watch officer, full-time conscience of the garrison. I had traded a rifle company for a cross on my collar and a crate of thin paper testaments. Still ended up on a wall with a weapon clipped to my chest. Haz stepped up beside me on the walkway. He bumped my shoulder with his, just enough to feel through the armor. "You hearing it?" he asked quietly. "Hearing what?" He cocked his head toward the edge. "Down there." We both went still. Wind skated over the parapet. Steel creaked as Tower 7 shifted a fraction of a millimeter, the whole structure adjusting to some change in load. The usual small noises of a giant thing pretending to be solid. Beneath that, something else. A faint, slow rhythm, like distant drums muffled by layers of ice. Not regular, not mechanical. Each pulse climbed up through the soles of my boots. "I hear the wall," I answered. "Same as always. Feels different tonight." Wind direction changed. I was lying, and we both knew it. "You nervous, Sergeant?" "Nervous is when I can still pretend I'm not afraid," he muttered. "This is the other thing." Before I could answer, the motion sensor on the parapet chimed. A sharp, impatient note in my helmet. We both turned to the display set into the inner face of the tower. A line of tiny green icons marked the fixed sensors along our stretch of wall. One had shifted to amber and was blinking. "7 to control." I touched my wrist unit. "We have a localized vibration alert on Mike 12. Control answered with the same lazy calm. "Probably another icefall. Log it, check it with optics, and reset." "Copy." Mike 12 was a sensor cluster bolted under the parapet about 30 meters to our right. It listened for changes in how the wall carried sound and stress. It should not have tripped unless something physical hit the structure. "Take your squad down to 12, I told Haz. "I will sweep with the tower light." He tapped 2 fingers to his helmet in a mock salute and waved his squad forward. They set off along the parapet, harness reels clicking as they went. I turned to the tower controls. The main search lamp hung on a pivot mount that could tilt along the outer face of the wall. It had a hard limit a few degrees short of straight down. The designers trusted the rule more than their own troops. "Tower 7 sweeping toward Mike 12, I reported. "Logged," Control answered. The lamp's beam slid along the wall in a slow arc, bright enough to carve hard shadows in every dent and ridge. Frost glittered where it swept past. The light reached Mike 12 and kept going a little lower, right to the angle where the wall dropped away. Something caught the light and flashed pale gold. "Hold!" My own voice startled me. "Back it up!" I eased the control stick and brought the beam up just a fraction. There, below the parapet, just out of reach from our walkway, the cryo-steel brace that held Mike 12 in place was deformed in a way I had never seen. 3 long depressions pressed into the metal, side by side, like fingers, each one almost a meter across. The edges of the depressions glowed faintly, as if the metal still remembered heat, and the surface around them had buckled outward, frozen mid-splash. It looked as if something huge had grabbed the wall and squeezed. "Has," I called over the squad channel. "Stop where you are and look at the wall under 12. Use your shoulder lamp." "Copy." He turned. His small helmet light swung down, the beam catching on the deformed brace from a different angle. His breath rasped once over the channel. "What is that?" he whispered. Behind him, one of his troopers whistled under a breath. "Holy, keep it professional," I cut in. The glove tightened on my rifle strap as if it had its own opinion. Control broke in. "7, what are you looking at?" "Structural deformation under sensor Mike 12, I answered. "Looks like heat damage. 3 parallel depressions, approximate width 1 meter each, depth maybe 10 centimeters. No visible cracking." "That much detail for free," Has murmured. "Log it," Control replied. "Tag the area and mark it for maintenance. We will bump it up." "Copy. Has, paint it." He pulled a small spray can from his belt and leaned out as far as his harness allowed, putting a bright orange circle around the damaged brace. The color jumped against the dull steel. "Want me to climb down for measurements?" he asked. "No." The word came faster than thought. "Negative. Mark complete and fall back to Tower 7. Orders from on high, Padre. Or your own?" "Mine." He snorted once, but he backed away from the edge. The wall carried a lot of marks. Bolt scars, weld lines, repairs. This was different. The metal had rippled out from each depression like the surface of fat hitting a hot pan, and then frozen mid-motion. No scorch marks, no residue. Whatever did that had put a lot of energy into a very small contact area, quick and precise. Smugglers did not do that with their bare hands. I opened a fresh incident log on my wrist unit. The form auto-filled most of the details. Location, time, tower number. I thumbed in the rest. Structural anomaly, possible heat damage. Shape, 3 parallel indentations, source unknown. No corresponding impact record on external sensors. Recommend full analysis. I flagged the log as priority and sent it up the chain. A tiny icon acknowledged receipt. Control, anomaly logged and marked. Request guidance. A pause. I imagined a bored officer 2 levels below the surface, sipping something hot. "Guidance is this, Chaplain." The voice came back with a thin smile in it. "Keep your troops' eyes forward. If smugglers have new toys, that is above both of our pay grades." "Copy." Eyes forward. The channel cut. Smugglers. Right. Has came up the stairs onto the tower platform and pulled off his helmet. His hair was sweat-plastered and curling, his face raw from the cold. He leaned his elbows on the inner rail, keeping his gaze carefully away from the outer parapet. "You getting the same feeling I am?" he asked. "That depends. Are you thinking about smugglers?" "I am thinking about the size of that handprint." He rubbed his forearms like he could push the image out through his sleeves. "We do not know it is a handprint," I told him. "We do not know it is not." He had me there. "Tell your squad it is just a structural anomaly," I said. "Let maintenance people have the nightmares. Maintenance people never get the fun jobs." He gave me a tired grin that did not reach his eyes. "You going to tell me it is nothing?" "I am going to tell you that if it is something, it is not our job to guess what." "That sounds like nothing with extra steps." He watched me for a moment, waiting for the easy reassurance, the chaplain's pat line about faith in command or faith in something bigger. I did not give it to him. Instead, I turned back to the parapet, to the line where the wall met the dark. The beam still illuminated that warped brace, the 3 deep indentations holding their pale glow. "End of shift in 20, I said. "We will grab coffee and talk about anything except the thing none of us saw." He snorted. "Coffee is not strong enough for that." "We have sacramental wine. Is that rated for morale use? I make the rules on that." He straightened and knocked his helmet lightly against my shoulder before putting it back on. Then he gathered his squad and moved them along the walkway, boots ringing on steel. His people talked low, quick, the way soldiers always do when they have seen something they are not allowed to understand yet. I kept my gaze on that deformed patch of metal until the relief shift arrived and took my place. I did not look down. The chapel was a bunker 2 decks in from the outer skin, carved out of the wall's inner mass. No windows, just a narrow space where someone on the original build had decided the garrison would need a place to sit and pretend they were not alone. I hung my outer armor on the rack by the door and stepped inside in my thermal underlayer and station uniform. The benches were bolted to the floor, metal warmed just enough that you would not freeze to them. A plain altar of composite board, a battered field cross, and a screen where I could throw up recorded hymns if anyone wanted the full performance. Most did not. They wanted a room where the cameras were set to privacy, and the chaplain was bound by code not to repeat whatever he heard. Haz sat on the front bench, still in his underlayer, boots unlaced. His helmet rested beside him, visor turned inward like it was listening. "You are early," I told him. He shrugged without looking back. "You said coffee and talking about nothing." I walked up the narrow aisle and dropped onto the bench beside him. "This is not the coffee room. Coffee room is full of people who saw the same thing I did," he murmured, "and all of them are planning to talk about it while pretending they are not." He had a point. I reached down to the small heater at the base of the altar and thumbed it up. Warm air pushed at my knees like a tired dog. My hands still stung from the cold of the tower rail. "We log it. Command looks at it. Maintenance bangs on it with tools. We get a bulletin about new sabotage methods," I said. "Cycle complete." "You believe that?" "I believe something will be written down, yes." He scratched at the short hairs at the back of his neck. That was his tell. When he did not trust something, his fingers went there, worrying at old scar tissue. "I heard it before I saw it," he said quietly. "On my last rotation before this one. You were off shift. We got a vibration through the parapet. Not like today. Slower. Longer. Like something heavy was dragging itself along just out of sight. You reported it. Logged as minor seismic event." He snorted. "They told us the ice shifts sometimes, that it sounds worse than it is. Sometimes that is true. Is it true this time?" The heater clicked. Somewhere deep in the wall, a load-bearing rib flexed and relaxed. "You want an honest answer or the kind that helps you sleep?" I asked. "Both." "Honest answer is, I do not know what is grabbing the wall. The answer that helps you sleep is, it will probably grab it again whether you understand it or not, so you might as well rest while you can." He barked a laugh that surprised both of us. "You are terrible at this," he muttered. "It is an acquired talent." We let the silence sit, stretched thin but not entirely uncomfortable. I had been a line officer before the collar and the cross. I had watched men bleed out under enemy fire while I followed orders that made sense on a map and none at all on the ground. I had moved to chaplaincy because I thought if I could not keep people alive, maybe I could keep them from breaking before they died. Then the posting came down. Ice wall station, outer perimeter, frozen moon, smugglers to watch for, quiet assignment. No one told me about giant handprints in the structure. Haz shifted on the bench. "Padre, I keep thinking about that rule. We have a lot of rules. The one about the edge, the way they hammer it, the way the techs welded plates over half the old firing ports so no one can lean out and look down even by accident. That is to stop people freezing their tongues to the railing, I offered. He did not smile this time. What if the rule is not about smugglers? He asked. What if it is about us not seeing something we are not supposed to see? His voice dropped on the last words. Speculation is above my grade too, I told him. What matters is this. The wall is here. We are on it. Something is touching it from the wrong side. We watch, we report, we keep each other from doing anything stupid in between. Like leaning out without a tether, or volunteering for maintenance duty on the lower braces. He laced his fingers together and stared at the floor. You ever break the rule? He asked. Be honest. I have thought about it. I let the memories surface. A night on a different wall, a different war, leaning out over a city while fire climbed toward us. Where I came from, if you looked down, you saw the things you were supposed to protect. Here, if you look down, there is nothing you can help. Nothing we know about, he answered. I did not argue. He had earned the right to keep that doubt. The door chime buzzed. A private from another squad stuck her head in. Chaplain, Sergeant, Control wants you both in ops. The way she braced in the doorway, helmet tucked under one arm, told me this was not a routine request. We on some kind of schedule? Haz asked, as he pulled his boots tight. Maintenance patrol is late returning, she answered. Control wants all section leads and you, Chaplain, for words. She did not have a better term for what I did. Most of them did not. That was fine. If there were no words, I mostly just sat with people anyway. I grabbed my jacket and followed them out. Operations sat near the center of the wall complex, the way a brain sits in a skull, protected by layers of bone and habit. The main room was a low dome crowded with consoles and people half out of uniform. A circular display showed an overhead map of the wall, towers marked as points along a line. Mike 12 flashed amber on the map. A few towers down, a different icon pulsed red. Maintenance Team Bravo went out to inspect gun nest 14, the duty officer told us as we stepped in. Their suit telemetry cut in and out for the last 10 minutes. We have lost clear contact. How far out from the nest? Haz asked. The officer gestured to the display. Right about here, on the approach walkway. Their last confirmed position was at the junction where the main parapet meets the nest spur. Any visual? We are pulling the last feed. The main screen shifted to show helmet footage. Grainy, narrow cone of view. The maintenance lead walking point, 2 techs behind, all tethered to the same safety rail line that ran along the thinner walkway out to the gun nest. They moved forward. Frost underfoot. Dark ahead. The nest itself was out of frame. The picture shuddered once like the camera wearer had stumbled. Trip? Someone in the back offered. Quiet, the officer snapped. The image trembled again. A low groan came through the helmet mic, not from the man wearing it. Lower. Deeper. The sound of metal giving way under stress. The lead turned. His lamp swept back along the walkway. For a heartbeat, the camera caught the parapet beside them, and the world tilted. In that brief flash, the outer edge of the walkway was no longer level. The parapet had bulged outward, its anchor points tearing, the whole structure sagging slightly toward the drop. The feed cut to static. Telemetry after that shows motion, the officer said. No clear pictures. Then nothing. Rescue team? I asked. He nodded. We have already dispatched. They are approaching now. On the map, a line of blue dots moved toward the red icon. What do you need us for? Haz crossed his arms. You do not call a chaplain and a line sergeant just to watch shaky cam. The officer's mouth twitched. Command wants you, chaplain, ready for casualty support. And they want squad leads briefed in person, in case we need a quick lockdown. Lockdown for what? Someone else muttered. We have a damaged gun nest, the officer answered, and possible structural compromise on the approach. That is all the information we have at this time. It was the exact amount of information that sounded written 3 days ago for a different incident. We watched the map. The blue dots reached the red icon and clustered. There was a long, slow minute where no one breathed very much. Then one dot broke away, moving back toward the main wall. "Rescue 1 returning with 1 casualty," came the voice over the room's speakers. 2 techs are gone. Walkway section failed. We have 1 survivor in bad shape. "Bring them to Medbay 1, the officer ordered. "We will route the corridor cameras for eyes, but keep the external feed private." He turned to me. "Chaplain, get down there." I nodded and headed for the door at a brisk trot, boots thudding on the deck. Haz fell in beside me. "You are not going alone," he muttered. "If he is one of mine, I want to hear what he has to say without filters." "Command is going to love that. Command can file a complaint." We took the internal lift down to the medical level. The car vibrated around us, not just from the ancient gears. The whole wall was restless today. Medbay 1 was a compact space lined with 2 treatment beds and racks of supplies. The air was warmer here, thick with the dry sting of antiseptic. The survivor lay on the nearer bed, armor half cut away. A medic worked over his left arm, or what was left of it. From elbow to shoulder, the skin was an ugly, blistered mass, already bandaged in layers of cooling gel. From elbow down, there was nothing. Just bandage tied off over a reinforced end of bone. The man's eyes were wide and glassy. His breath came in short, wet pulls. "He is shocky but responsive," the medic warned. "Keep it short." I stepped to the bedside. "Walker," I murmured, reading the name on his armor plate. "What happened out there?" He focused on my face with effort, his pupils jittered. "Walkway moved," he rasped. "Not just failing, it lifted, like something pushed it up from below." The medic started to interrupt. I raised a hand and he bit it back. "How did you lose the arm?" I asked. Walker stared through me at something far away. "It grabbed the wall," he whispered. "The whole thing. Just out of sight. I had my hand on the rail, and then the rail was not there. Something wrapped around it from below. 3 plates. Hot. Burned through glove, through skin, like I was nothing." He gagged. "I tried to pull back. I tried," he forced out. "It held the wall and me at the same time, like I was an extra." "And then?" "Walkway sheared on the other side. Gun nest went. Took it with it." He choked on a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. "Whatever had me did not let go. It went down and took my arm as souvenir. Rest of me stayed because Rock here tackled me." He jerked his chin toward the medic, who shook his head. "You are sure it was under the walkway?" I pressed. "Not something falling from above?" "You go out there and feel where the pull came from," Walker whispered. "Then you come back and tell me who is sure." His fingers clenched weakly around the edge of the bed. I reached in and gripped his hand. My own scars itched in sympathy along my forearms, phantom memory of burns from a different theater. "Command is logging this as a structural failure," the medic muttered. "Already got the bulletin. We are not supposed to talk about anything grabbing." "Of course we are not," Haz growled from the foot of the bed. He was white around the mouth. He knew Walker. They all knew each other. Ice Wall Station did not have enough people for strangers. I squeezed the injured man's hand once more and let go. "You rest. We will take it from here." He closed his eyes, whether from pain or simple relief at being allowed to stop talking. In the corridor outside, Haz stopped and slapped the bulkhead once with the flat of his hand. "It grabbed," he hissed. "He felt it. Do you believe him?" "Yes." He sagged back against the wall. "Then we have something big enough to lift a walkway, and precise enough to collect arms without dropping the rest of the man. Also something that knows exactly where to put force to shear a support," I added. "You cannot still think smugglers." "I am not thinking smuggler or anything else," I answered. "I am thinking the wall is being touched by something we do not understand, from a direction we are forbidden to look, and Command is going to keep calling it structural fatigue until we are all decorating the memorial wall. You are supposed to help me sleep, he muttered. I am supposed to tell you the truth. He glared, but there was no real heat in it. Just fear looking for a place to go. The internal comms pinged. All section heads and the chaplain to ops, Control ordered. Command update. We shared a look and went back up. The room felt hotter the second time, bodies packed shoulder to shoulder under the low ceiling. A new face had joined the cluster of officers on the raised platform. Station Commander Drake, grey hair cropped close, jaw set like a man working through chronic pain. When Drake showed up in person, someone up the chain was watching. Listen up, the duty officer called. Command wants this in the same breath for all of you, so we are doing it live. The map of the wall on the central display now pulsed with 3 red icons. The damaged gun nest, Mike 12's bracket, and a brace farther down that must have tripped while we were in medbay. Over the last 2 shifts, we have logged multiple incidents of structural deformation along the outer face, the officer went on. Gun nest 14 was lost with 2 technicians. One survivor attributes the failure to a sudden upward force and contact with unknown hot surfaces. A ripple of unease passed through the room. Command has reviewed the data, Drake cut in. His voice had the dry rasp of someone who had been yelling privately before he came in. They have confirmed no external vehicles, no suits, no known mechanical devices were in contact with the wall at those points. Internal stress analysis shows the deformations are consistent with rapid thermal expansion in localized areas. So something heated it, Haz murmured near my shoulder. Drake continued. The working assessment is as follows. Hostile actors may be testing new sabotage tools on our outer structure. These may include heated clamps or controlled microcharges placed from below the parapet using extended equipment. Smuggler crews have the motive and the creativity, and they know the dark side terrain better than we do. He delivered the line smoothly, like he had rehearsed every word. Do they also know how to lift a walkway with no support from beneath? Someone asked. The officer ignored that. Effective immediately, he pressed on. The standing order regarding the edge is upgraded. You all know the line. We do not look over the edge. That was a safety rule. From now on, it is also a security directive. No one leans out. No one deploys unauthorized cameras or drones over the parapet. Any attempt to visually access the outer face without approval will be treated as collusion with hostile actors. The room went quiet in a different way. Before, the silence had been question. Now, it had teeth. You cannot be serious, Haz muttered. Harness points will be inspected and shortened where feasible, the officer continued. Additionally, Central Command is pushing a firmware update to all parapet-mounted optics. They will lock at a safe down angle. Tower flood lamps and gun nests will be restricted to the same arc. My skin went cold in a way that had nothing to do with the planet outside. You are blindfolding the wall, I blurted. Drake's eyes flicked to me. We are preventing hotheads from leaning out to poke at someone else's toys. We will handle this with proper tools, Chaplain. What tools? I asked. We just watched something tear away a gun nest with bare contact. Our one witness lost an arm. Your answer is to look away from the damage and call it new smuggler hardware. A muscle jumped in his cheek. You have your role, Lieutenant, he replied. Keep people calm. Keep them focused. I have mine. I keep them alive in the ways that scale. He looked around the room. Here is what you tell your squads. We have unknown sabotage on the outer face. We are tightening procedure to prevent it. They keep eyes forward and weapons ready. They trust that command will deal with whatever is out there. Questions? The kind he would answer, he meant. Someone asked about reinforcement teams. Another about extra armor on walkways. Those got clipped. Practical responses. I kept my mouth shut. I had pushed as far as my collar and my conscience would let me in public. As the briefing broke up, Drake caught my eye again and crooked a finger. I stepped closer. Chaplain, he murmured under the room noise. You know as well as I do that walls do strange things under this kind of cold. Whatever is happening out there, we gain nothing by letting every private on watch lean out for a better view. If what is happening out there is big enough to do this, we gain nothing by pretending it is just mental fatigue, I answered. His gaze hardened. You will keep your doubts out of your sermons. Understood? What do you want in my sermons, sir? I asked quietly. Faith in the wall? Faith in command? Or faith that whatever is touching us from the dark will politely stop if we do not look at it? Faith that their deaths, if they come, will not be meaningless, he replied. That is your department. He turned away before I could answer. After the briefing, I went back to Tower 7 alone. The duty roster did not call for me to be on the parapet, but the tower had the one floodlamp control I trusted. The firmware update had already gone through. The control stick would not let the beam tilt down past a preset angle. The system flashed a warning if I tried. I complied, more or less. I slewed the beam along the wall until it caught Mike 12's brace again. The orange ring Haz had painted around the deformed section glowed under the light, bright and obscene against the dull metal. The 3 deep depressions were still there. Whatever residual heat had kept their edges bright earlier was gone now. Frost had crept into the ripples, smoothing them a little, but not enough. The shape was clear. 3 thick fingers, maybe a palm behind them, hidden under a layer of flared metal. I stood there in the glow, helmet off, station air cold on my cheeks. Smuggler hardware did not do that. A saboteur would not waste time sculpting dents that looked like a hand. A clamp would leave marks where its joints bit into the metal. Microcharges would blacken the surface or fracture it. This was contact. Something with size and intention had taken hold of our wall and lifted a part of it like it was a rung on a ladder. We do not look over the edge. I put my hand on the inner rail and leaned out as far as the harness and the new limits allowed, careful not to approach the parapet. Below me, just outside of view, the structure fell away for kilometers. Somewhere down there, in that endless dark, something was moving toward us. I did not need to see it to know. Behind me, boots scuffed on the stair. I recognized Haz's gait before he came into view. You know there are regulations against priests loitering alone with heavy machinery, he observed. It is not loitering, I answered. It is worry. He came up beside me and rested his forearms on the inner rail. Control is already pinging us with guidance on how to phrase things. Isolate rumor, reinforce mission objectives, stress confidence in command. They really do not want us talking about handprints. Of course they do not. You going to obey that? I do not preach rumors, I told him. I preach what people already know and are afraid to say out loud. Which is what, right now? That this is not smugglers, that something is climbing. The words came out flat. No drama, just the simple weight of them. He closed his eyes for a moment. You felt it too, earlier, he murmured. Through the boots. Yes. Do you think it knows we are here? I think it knows where the heat is. He exhaled slowly, careful not to let it turn into anything that sounded like panic. We stood there for another minute, just long enough for the cold to bite again and remind us where we were. Then the wall shifted under our feet. It was small, a tiny, sharp tremor, like someone had kicked the base from the outside. The floodlamp's beam jittered on the wall. A groan rolled up through the metal and into my bones. Instinct shoved my body toward the edge, the way you step toward a sound without thinking. My harness went tight. My boot hit the parapet toe guard. A hand closed on my collar and yanked me back. Haz's face was inches from mine, his eyes wide. Rule, remember? He hissed. My heart thudded once, hard, trying to catch up with the adrenaline that had leapt ahead. Right, I managed. Rule. We do not look over the edge. I turned back to the wall and forced my gaze to stay on what I could see. The deformed brace. The orange paint. The place where something had touched us and left a mark. Whatever was down there had hands big enough to span 3 meters, hot enough to bend cryo-steel, and strong enough to lift a walkway and steal a man's arm on its way down. Smugglers did not do that. Haz leaned his shoulder against mine, harness lines crossing. "You going to tell Command what that tremor felt like?" he asked. "Yes." "You think they will listen?" "No." He nodded slowly, as if that were the only answer that made sense. "So we log it," he said. "We hold the wall. We keep each other from being idiots. And we wait for whatever is climbing to make a bigger mistake than we do." Something like that. He tipped his head toward the etched rule on the inner face of the parapet. The black letters looked almost smug. "We do not look over the edge," he muttered. "Fine. But if something down there is coming up, it is going to look at us." "That is the part I am worried about," I answered. Out in the darkness, beyond the reach of our lights, something moved again. I could not see it. I could only feel the shiver in the metal and know, with the certainty that does not come from faith or orders, that our quiet posting on the ice wall was over. The wall let us sleep for one more cycle. Then it started shouting. It began in a quiet way, the way real shouting does. Small noises that did not fit. On the next off-duty stretch, I spent an hour pretending to rest in my bunk, staring at the underside of the bunk above while my mind replayed the tremor and the way my body had tried to lean over the edge on its own. When it was clear sleep was not coming, I gave up and went where I always went when I needed to pick at old scars. The chapel. I locked the door from the inside and crossed to the storage alcove. Every chaplain inherits two things on a new posting: a locker full of outdated devotional materials and a crate of confidential records they are not encouraged to read unless something goes wrong. Things had gone wrong. The crate sat under the lowest shelf, stamped with a faded Chaplain Corps crest. I dragged it to the center of the room and popped the seals. Inside, under a row of printed sermon collections that nobody used anymore, there was a stack of log pads. Each one held the private notes and end-of-tour reports of my predecessors. They were supposed to be reference material for handling grief and morale, not investigative tools. "Forgive me, whoever you were," I muttered, and turned the first one on. I skimmed quickly. Names I did not recognize, minor incidents, station gossip. One chaplain had filled a dozen pages on the benefits of weekly card tournaments. Another had strong feelings about people sleeping with boots on. Nothing useful. The third pad was different. The handwriting on the title screen had a stiff, careful precision. Chaplain Major Elim Soon. Tour start date, tour end date. The end date had a note beside it. Killed in line of duty. I opened his last few entries. He wrote like a man who had spent his life trying to keep other people calm and had finally run out of ways. Day 19 of the second quarter, outer structural alarms again during night cycle. Official brief lists, seismic creep. Unofficially, 3 gunners report feeling a grip on the wall during the event. Their wording, not mine. When they leaned toward the parapet to check, orders came down hard to stay back and wait for engineers. No one looked, or no one will admit they did. Further down. There is a story in the Nightfall memorials. Siege constructs deployed along this very drop during the war. Overextended, damaged, thrown into the deep at ceasefire rather than brought home and dismantled, because it was simpler. I am not an engineer, but I know what weight and cold and time can do to metal and flesh. I keep asking myself, what if simpler did not mean finished? I kept reading. I am starting to suspect that the rule about not looking over the edge is not about smugglers at all. It is about the burden of seeing what still climbs in the dark. The next entry was shorter, ink-blotched. Containment protocols are above my clearance, but I heard Drake arguing with someone on hardline. We drop the wall section and we write another plaque. His words. He saw me in the corridor and shut the door. Under that, one more line, almost an afterthought. If I do not survive the next incident, whoever reads this, Remember that no order is holy just because men wrote it on metal. The pad timestamp ended 3 days later. The date matched the oldest memorial plaque in the chapel. So, we had at least one chaplain who thought something was climbing, and that command was willing to lose the wall to stop it. We had siege constructs from an old war thrown into the abyss instead of dismantled properly. We had the same commander, still here. And now we had 3-fingered handprints melted into cryosteel. My first reaction was simple anger. Not even righteous, just tired. I had come out here to avoid repeating past mistakes, and instead I had walked straight into someone else's. My second reaction was the quieter one under that. A sinking sense that if I kept reading, I would not be able to pretend I did not know. I read anyway. Most of the earlier entries were sermons in draft, musings on faith and guilt. Then I found a block labelled Confidential Pastoral Notes and accessed it with my own chaplain code. The Corps liked to pretend we could trust each other, even when the rest of the chain did not. Inside were short summaries of private conversations. No names, just Infantry NCO or Medic Junior Grade. One line stopped me. Infantry NCO reports recurring nightmares of faces in the wall after outer incidents. Describes them as armor plates with human features stretched across. No signs of psychosis otherwise. Diagnosis, trauma imagery triggered by sound. Recommended rest and reduced outer duty. Request denied due to staffing. Faces in the wall. Armor plates with features stretched across. If the siege constructs had been made from both machines and bodies, and then torched and hurled into the abyss, what climbed back up would not be kind. I shut the pad and sat with it in my lap, feeling the slow drum of my pulse in my neck. Somewhere out there, people who had built those things were probably old or dead. Someone else had inherited their secrets. Same pattern, different generation. Build tools to win one war, bury them poorly, then pretend they would stay buried. The chapel walls felt closer than usual. I slid the pad back into the crate and locked it away. The next time the wall groaned, someone would die. Maybe when that happened, it would matter that at least one person on this station knew the shape of the lie. The next alarm came 12 hours later. I was in the mess, trading small talk for the price of a cup of lukewarm broth. The floor shook under my boots with a short, sharp jolt. A moment later, the outer alarm sounded, a rising tone that cut through every other noise. Heads snapped up all around me. No one moved until the second tone, lower and longer, confirmed it was not a drill. Outer breach, the nearest intercom blared. All response teams to assigned positions, tower units to combat stations. Repeat, outer breach. Haz was already on his feet, bowl abandoned, and his squad was moving before anyone else had cleared the benches. I dumped my cup and went with them. Chaplains do not have assigned breach stations, not officially, but no one tried to stop me. We reached the armory in a rush of bodies and harness straps. The quartermaster tossed rifles and fresh power packs over the counter as fast as hands reached for them. I clipped my own weapon to its sling. On the way up the tower stairs, the wall shook again. Dust sifted from the seams overhead. The sound was wrong. Not an impact from outside, but a wrenching note from within the structure itself. Feels like it is being stretched. Haz grunted as we climbed. We burst out onto the parapet, into chaos. Gun Nest 14 sat halfway between Tower 7 and Tower 8, jutting out from the outer wall on a spur of metal like a tooth. It was supposed to give a better firing angle along the cliff face. Now it listed at a strange angle, its outer struts bent, one corner sagging toward the drop. A squad already occupied the nest, weapons braced. They were firing down along the outer wall, not out into the waste. Their shots slammed into something just out of my line of sight. Sparks flew up, bright against the ice. "Haz, on the spur!" I snapped. "2 fire teams. Keep your tethers short." He clipped onto the safety line and led his people out toward the nest. The walkway under them was warped, buckled upward in the middle, as if someone had shoved up from beneath. I stayed on the main parapet and ran for the nearest mast with an external monitor. The camera feed showed a view straight down along the wall's outer face. I froze. Below the nest, clinging to the cliff, something the size of a dropship hung off the cryosteel. The first thing that registered was scale. Its upper limb alone spanned from the base of the nest to halfway up its wall. The arm ended in 3 thick fingers broad as a soldier's bunk, each one tipped with a flat contact plate. Those plates were pressed hard against the wall, right where the buckling showed above. The second thing was texture. This was not smooth metal. Its surface was a mess of welded plates, old armor segments, and welded rib-like bars. Between them ran cords of pale tissue stretched tight, threaded through holes in the metal. Here and there, the cords knotted into bulges that looked too much like joints. Near the shoulder, half buried under a mesh of wires, a human face looked out. Lips cracked and frozen mid-cry, skull stretched thin, one eye socket empty, the other occupied by a dead optic sensor. The skin had taken on the flat color of old wax. The third thing was movement. It was climbing. The limb flexed. The 3 contact plates brightened from dull metal to a sullen glow, and the cryosteel beneath them swelled outward. A fresh set of ripples crawled up the wall toward the nest. Gunfire tore into the exposed surfaces. Chunks of metal flew, some pieces fell away, clattering down the cliff, others simply folded, revealing more layers beneath. "Keep sights on the limb," I heard an officer bark over the channel. "Do not waste rounds on the torso." The climber's other arm came into view, rising from below. It found a new hold lower down, fingers clamping around a reinforcement spar. When those plates engaged, the spar bulged too, the welds shrieking. "Haz, you will lose the spur," I called into my mic. "Get your people back." "Negative," he replied. "We hold until they are clear of the nest. There are still bodies in there." Through the monitor, I saw what he meant. 2 motionless shapes lay half inside the nest, half on the walkway. Their harnesses had tangled in the safety line when the structure twisted. They were either dead or about to be. The climber heaved. The nest shuddered. A seam opened along the joint where the spur met the main wall. "Command, you watching this?" I snapped. "We are watching," Drake's voice came back. "Hold the line, chaplain. Keep your men from panicking." The climber's upper limb shifted its grip. For a heartbeat, its palm pressed flat right beneath the parapet, 3 fingers spread. The contact plates flared bright. Everything jumped. The walkway buckled higher. One of Haz's troopers lost footing and went sideways, harness jerking taut. Another grabbed him and hauled him in. The 2 trapped techs tore free of their harnesses and slid. One went over the edge without a sound. The other caught the lip of the nest by the fingertips. I left the monitor and ran along the parapet towards them. By the time I reached the spur route, Haz was already there. He had his squad in a staggered line, one knee up, rifles braced against shoulders, all of them firing down along the outer face. The gunfire rattled through my bones. Casings bounced off the walkway, spinning away. The noise almost drowned out the sound coming from below. A thick, grinding roar as metal ripped against metal. "Chaplain, get back!" Haz yelled without looking. I ignored him and clipped my harness onto the spur line. The nest swayed underfoot, like standing on a ship in rough water. The tech still clinging to the lip caught my eye. He looked young. Eyes wide, teeth bared, fingers white where they dug into the metal. I dropped to a knee, jammed my boots against a deck bolt for leverage, and grabbed his harness with both hands. "On 3, I told him. 1, 2, pull." We hauled. The nest tilted further. For a heartbeat, I thought the whole structure would go with us. Haz shifted his fire and barked at his people to redirect. Shots chewed into the climber's limb. One round must have hit something vulnerable. The glow in the contact plates dimmed. The pressure under the nest eased by a fraction. We got the tech up and over onto the walkway. He fell hard, gasping. Half his face was bloodied, one leg bent at an angle that did not belong to any standard human design. We retreated in a staggered line, 2 covering while the rest moved, then leapfrogging back. Behind us, the nest gave a long, weary groan. I turned in time to see the outer corner drop away. The climber did not roar or rage. It simply let go of the damaged holds, found new ones below, and dragged itself up enough that the falling nest scraped along its torso before tearing free. The nest tumbled down the cliff, metal shrieking, then vanished into the dark. The sound of it going carried up through the wall in a long, diminishing wail. The climber kept moving. It paused just long enough to press one hand against the fresh wound where the spur had been. The contact plates lit again. The torn edge of the wall bent outward, metal rippling as if it were trying to heal in the wrong direction. Then the thing shifted its weight, dropped a little, and found another anchor point lower down, like it had taken a bite of us and was content for the moment. "Cease fire!" Drake ordered over the general channel. "It is moving away. Conserve ammunition." The gunfire tapered off in uneven bursts. I braced my hands on my knees, breath coming hard. My heart hammered against the armor plates. So, that was what a siege construct looked like after decades in the dark. Not a story, not a metaphor. A climbing machine made of bones and metal and heat, chewing its way up our wall one hold at a time. "Medical to Inner Deck 3, the intercom blared. "Multiple casualties incoming from 14. Haz slapped a fresh power pack into his rifle and wiped his face with the back of his glove. The skin around his eyes was pinched. "You still thinking about smuggler hardware?" he asked. "I think we just saw something Command does not have a clean word for," I answered. He snorted weakly. "They will find one." He was right. They always did. After the first wave of triage and statements, Drake called a closed briefing. He picked the people who had rank, and the people whose stories he could not control with a memo. That meant the senior tower officers, the maintenance chief, and me. The operations dome felt even more cramped this time. The map showed Gun Nest 14 as a dull grey absence now, the spur digitally erased. The area where the climber had pressed was marked with a yellow ring. Drake stood beside the display with a tablet in his hand. He looked tired in a way I had never seen on his face before. "All right," he began. "You have all either seen the creature or heard enough descriptions that pretending you do not is pointless. So here is the version you keep in your heads and not in your squad rooms." He tapped the tablet. The central screen shifted to a grainy freeze frame from one of the Nest cameras. It showed the climber's limb in profile. 3 thick fingers, contact plates dull. The human face near the shoulder was blurred, but still recognizably wrong. "These are Nightfall constructs," he continued. "Siege units built for the last war. They were deployed along this cliff to keep an enemy from scaling up from the dark side. At ceasefire, the damaged ones were pushed over rather than retrieved. We believed that between the fall, the cold, and the lack of targets, they would stop functioning." The maintenance chief rubbed his eyes. "You knew they were down there," he muttered. "You have known this whole time." "I was junior staff when the first post-war incidents occurred," Drake answered. "The early reports went above my clearance. By the time I took this command, the standing orders were already in place." "And those are?" I asked. He met my gaze. "Containment, surveillance, and in the worst case, sacrifice." The words sat in the air for a beat before anyone responded. "Explain," I forced out. "The constructs appear to be instinctively drawn to heat sources," Drake went on. "Reactor signatures, body heat, anything that breaks the natural cold around them. The wall radiates more warmth than the rock. The garrison bodies and equipment add to that. As long as we are here, they climb toward us instead of continuing along the cliff towards the colony." "So we are bait," I said. "You are a tripwire," Drake corrected. "If they reach you in force, we know before they reach the civilians. Then we trigger Containment Protocol Temple Wall." He said the name like it tasted bad. On the screen, the map view returned. New icons appeared along our sector, small triangles at intervals along the wall's base. During original construction, shaped charges were set into the structural braces beneath this section, Drake explained. If enough constructs mass on the outer face, Orbital Command can remote arm the charges. A controlled detonation severs a segment of the wall and drops it, along with anything climbing it, down the cliff. With us on it, I murmured. With you on it, he confirmed. No euphemism at least. No honored defenders or necessary cost. Just the bare fact. Has this ever been done? The maintenance chief asked. Drake hesitated. That was answer enough. Not on this stretch, he replied finally. The plaque in your chapel belongs to the last section we dropped farther along the Terminator, before my tenure. My mind flicked back to Elim Suan's log. We drop the wall section and we write another plaque. How many people? I asked. Enough that the war ended on schedule, Drake answered. Those are the numbers the historians care about. A quiet anger lit in my chest. So when you tell me to keep people calm, I said, what you mean is keep them from asking why we are positioned over demolition charges we are never meant to see go off. I mean keep them from breaking before they have done their jobs. Drake shot back. If I tell every private that the ground under them can be dropped, half will crack, and the other half will think they can outsmart a construct by leaning over the parapet for a better shot. Both get us killed faster. He looked around the room, eyes lingering on each of us in turn. Here are your roles. You, tower officers, keep the watch tight. You, maintenance, shore up what you can and log what you cannot. And you, chaplain, you make sure when the time comes, they face whatever is coming with something in their spine besides panic. You plan to trigger the protocol, I realized. You think that thing we saw is just the first scout. He did not deny it. We have recorded increased structural events along the outer face over the last month, he replied instead. That climber was larger and more coordinated than earlier contacts. There will be more. When the count crosses a threshold, Orbital Command will order the drop. We will not get a vote. You have a voice, I pushed. You can argue thresholds. You can argue for evacuation. Evacuation is already in motion, he replied. You think all the cargo transfers in the last few weeks were ore? They have been moving key personnel and families off this moon in stages, quietly. So there is no panic. No one told the people on the wall, the maintenance chief growled. Because the wall has to function until the last ship leaves, Drake snapped. That is the calculus. I do not like it. I did not write it. But I enforce it, or worse things happen. I thought of Elim Suan, standing in some earlier version of this room, hearing the same speech. You are asking me to prepare men and women for death, I said. Not the generic kind we all sign up for, planned death, accounted for in advance. Yes. He did not flinch. You are asking me to bless a slaughter, I pressed. I am asking you to help them die for something other than fear. We looked at each other. I had been on the wrong end of a command decision once before. Different war, different field, same logic. Some lives weighed against others in a hand I could not see. That choice had hollowed me and pushed me into this collar. Now the same logic had followed me here. Different dressing on the same wound. Here is my counteroffer, I said. I will help them face what is coming. I will help them not break, but I am not promising you I will keep them obedient if obedience stops making sense. Be careful where you draw that line, he warned. If you turn them against their orders at the wrong moment, you will not save them. You will just scatter them for the constructs to pick apart. He turned away, dismissing the room. On the way out, the maintenance chief fell into step beside me. You knew something, he muttered, from your crate of doom. I suspected, I answered. Now I know enough to be angry instead of just suspicious. Haz waited for me outside ops. He had not been in the briefing, wrong rank, wrong department, but his face told me he knew it had not been good. Well? He pressed. Walk, I told him. We made 2 circuits of the corridor in silence before I spoke. Nightfall constructs, I began. Old siege units. They were thrown into the pit instead of dismantled. They are climbing back up. They like our heat. And there are charges under this section of wall that can be triggered to drop us all if too many of the things latch on. He took that in with a single, slow inhale. You sure? He asked finally. Commander just showed us the map. He rubbed the back of his neck, fingers kneading the old scar there until the skin reddened. So we are bait on a breakaway hook, he muttered. And someone a long way up the chain gets to decide when to cut the line. That is the simple version. What is the complicated one? The complicated one is this, I answered. We are here now. The colony behind us is full of people who do not know any of this. We can either hold the wall and hope Command's plan works, or we can try to change the plan and risk making everything worse. He stopped walking. You thinking about changing it? His eyes searched my face. I am thinking about whether I can live with letting it play out, I admitted. Last time I trusted that someone far away had the full picture, a lot of my company ended up names on a wall. And you think defying command would have fixed that? No, I said. I think doing nothing made me complicit. He mulled that over. You are not the one who designed the wall, he pointed out. You are the one stuck preaching over its foundations. Comforting. He gave a thin smile. You tell me how to hold the line until we know more, Padre. I will keep my people alive as long as I can. After that, he spread his hands. After that, we either get buried with a purpose or we figure out another way to stop climbing corpses from eating the colony. Constructs, I corrected. They are machines. He snorted. Machines do not have human faces welded to them. That was hard to argue. The wall did not give us much time to process. In the next day, we had 3 smaller incidents. Sensors tripped along different segments. Brief tremors shook specific braces. Each time when we got a camera onto the outer face, we caught glimpses of shapes pulling away. A limb here, a torso there. Always just enough to prove we were not imagining things. Never enough to make a clean case that would reach someone who did not want to hear it. We patched what we could. We logged what we could not. Command responded with perfunctory acknowledgements and small corrections to the watch schedule. Meanwhile, my work in the chapel changed. Confessions shifted from petty lies and homesickness to harder questions. Is it true? One trooper asked me, voice barely above a whisper in the closed room. About charges in the wall. Where did you hear that? I asked. Maintenance rumor, she muttered. They say if those things get too many hands on us, we are all going for a ride. Rumors travel faster than any official memo. Always have. They built this wall with all kinds of fail-safes, I answered, choosing each word. Some of them are ugly. What matters for you is simple. When the alarm sounds, you hold your spot and you watch your squad's backs. That is your world. Everything bigger than that is my problem and Drake's. She studied me. You are not denying it. No. Her shoulders dropped. Then tell me this, she murmured. If I hold the line and end up at the bottom of the pit, does it count for anything? It counts for the people behind you who never have to know how close it came, I answered. And it counts for you because you did not run. She nodded slowly, eyes damp. Sometimes faith is not about believing things will turn out well. Sometimes it is just about believing your choices matter in a universe that does not notice you. The breach came during a false morning. We do not have real dawn on a tidally locked moon, but the station cycles light in and out to keep people from losing track. We were halfway through an in cycle when the main alarms tripped. I was on my way out of the chapel when the corridor lights switched to combat red. The intercom spat static, then resolved into a clipped voice. Outer contact at multiple points along Sector 7, Control called. Repeat, multiple contact. Climber mass exceeding previous incidents. All units to stations. All officers to ops after placement. My throat dried. Mass. Not a single construct scouting. A cluster. Has met me at the junction. armor half fastened, helmet under one arm. He shoved it on as he jogged. "You feel that?" he muttered. The floor vibrated, like something very big was dragging itself along the outer face. Each tremor climbed up through the wall in waves. "Tower 7, I answered. "We go." We sprinted for the stairs. Out on the parapet, the wind carried a distant, grinding clatter. The sky toward the dark side pulsed with light where the wall's floodlamps swept, beams intersecting and sliding away. Every tower gun was online. Nests that had never seen real combat outside drills spat fire into the abyss. I ran straight to the external monitor and swung the view down. I had to force myself not to recoil. Below us, maybe 30 meters down, 3 constructs climbed side by side. The one from before had been a twisted giant. These 3 were worse in a different way. They were not as large, but they moved in a loose formation, limbs finding holds in a rhythm that almost matched. Each one bristled with scavenged armor plates and bone struts. One had a row of human spines lined up along its back like a macabre ridge. Another carried what looked like part of an old tank tread fused into its chest, the links shifting as it flexed. Between their plates, cords of tissue moved too, stretching and relaxing as they climbed. They were not rotting. They were maintained by whatever processes had kept these things clinging to existence in the dark. Their hands worked the wall. Contact plates grabbed, flared, released. Everywhere they touched, the cryo-steel buckled. Gunfire from the lower nests tore into them. One construct's arm jerked as rounds severed some of the tissue cords. A chunk of armor fell away, trailing what looked disturbingly like a cluster of fingers welded into the seam. It did not stop. "Targets are climbing directly towards Sector 7, Control reported. "All towers engage at will. Focus on limbs and joints. Do not let them reach the parapet." "Copy," Haz snapped. He and his squad took up firing positions, weapons braced along the parapet. I fell in beside them. We poured rounds into the nearest construct. Bullets sparked off metal plates, punched through softer matter, and sent fragments spinning away. Each hit seemed to slow it for a heartbeat. Then it adjusted and kept climbing. "Feels like shooting at an avalanche," one trooper muttered. "Keep pressure," Haz barked. "We are not letting it get a grip up here." A construct's hand slapped against the wall just below our position. The contact plates flared white-hot. The metal swelled outward, the heat wave visible. My suit's external sensors registered a spike, harsh and greasy like burnt insulation and cooked marrow. The stink tightened something in my chest. It made the threat feel immediate in a way visuals never could. "Contact plates," I shouted. "Aim for the joints behind them. If you can blow one finger off, it loses support." We focused fire where metal met twisted tissue. Under the concentrated barrage, one of the fingers on the nearest climber shattered. A shard of metal and fused bone tore free and tumbled. For the first time, the construct faltered. Its hand slipped. The remaining 2 plates scraped along the wall, gouging new furrows, but it lost purchase. For a heartbeat it hung there, weight pulling, other limbs scrambling. Then the joint, where its mangled hand met its arm, tore wide. The whole limb ripped free in a spray of metal and pale strands. The severed arm fell, end over end, hitting the cliff face on the way down and breaking into smaller pieces. The construct did not scream. It did not make any sound I could hear. It just shifted its remaining limbs, found new holds, and kept coming. "Are you kidding me?" Haz breathed. Fire swept across from Tower 8, joining ours. Between the concentrated angles, we managed to drive one of the 3 climbers sideways. It shifted to a lower brace and began moving along the wall instead of up. The other 2 did not break pattern. "Sector 7 constructs approaching critical proximity," Control warned. "Prepare for close engagement. Containment readiness level raised." That last phrase made my skin crawl. Containment readiness. The step before they escalated to dropping charges. In ops, someone would be following a checklist. If the constructs reached a certain height or density, they would alert orbital. Somewhere far above our heads, a hand would hover over a control that could erase this segment of the wall and everyone on it. Chaplain, Drake's voice hit my private channel. As of now, you are anchored to Tower 7. Do not leave the parapet without my explicit order. If we have to trigger Temple Wall, I want eyes I trust up here when it happens. He had just told me, without saying it plain, that he expected our section to be the one they dropped. If I said yes, I would be agreeing to watch my own people die on schedule. Understood, I answered, because there was a battle happening, and this was not the time to open a new front. Gunfire continued in hard, steady bursts. Armor and tissue tore away in chunks. One construct managed to get a hand high enough that its contact plates brushed the underside of the parapet. The heat flashed through the metal. I could feel it through the soles of my boots. Haz pivoted, slammed his rifle barrel almost straight down, and emptied a full magazine into the wrist joint. The limb spasmed and dropped away, leaving burned grooves in the wall. "Not today," he growled. For a moment, it looked like we might actually drive them off. Then the tremor changed. Instead of separate impacts from individual limbs, a deeper vibration rolled up through the wall. It felt as if something larger had joined the climb below our sight line, a weight that brought its own momentum. Cameras further down automatically panned to track new activity. The external monitor showed a wider angle. There were more constructs, 4, 5, maybe more, moving in a loose cluster beneath the first 3. Some climbed directly. Others pushed chunks of fallen armor and rubble into positions where the ones above could use them as stepping stones. Together, they were building a twisted staircase up the cliff face, using spare parts and broken bodies. "Control, we have multiple additional contacts," I snapped. "They are helping each other climb. This is not random." "We see them," Control answered, tense. "Orbital Command is assessing. All units maintain fire." The constructs moved with slow, terrible purpose. No rage, no visible emotion, just relentless motion toward heat. I kept firing, weapon braced, lungs burning. Somewhere behind the adrenaline, a thought coiled. We were already past the threshold where Temple Wall was meant to trigger. The only reason the charges had not gone off was that someone up there was hesitating. Either the people far above us were debating numbers, or Drake was buying us time. Time for what I did not know. I emptied another magazine, jammed in a fresh one, and found myself muttering Elim Soon's last line under my breath. No order is holy just because men wrote it on metal. If they dropped the wall now, how many constructs would actually go with us? Enough to justify the cost? Enough to keep the colony safe? Or just enough to make someone's chart look neat? Another tremor rolled through the structure, stronger than before. The parapet under my hands buzzed. "Control calling all towers," the general channel blared. "Stand by. Orbital Command has authorized partial arm of Temple Wall charges. Repeat, partial arm. Await final confirmation." Haz looked at me, eyes wide behind his visor. "This is it?" he breathed. "Not yet. They still have to push the last button." He barked a humorless laugh. "Feels like they are already halfway down." Down on the screen, the constructs climbed. Something inside me, something that had bent under older orders and never fully straightened, snapped to attention. If we stood here and did nothing, other people would choose the shape of our deaths. If we moved, we might make things worse. Between those two lies, there had to be a third option. The first step toward it was obvious. I keyed my private channel to Drake. "Commander," I called, "we need to talk about what happens if those charges go off with most of our garrison still on this line." His answer came back at once, as if he had been waiting. "Then talk fast, Chaplain," he replied, "because whatever is climbing out of the dark does not intend to slow down for your conscience." Down the wall, the constructs climbed. The parapet vibrated under my boots. Haz and his squad kept firing, faces tight. "Temple Wall needs manual arming," I snapped. "You told Suun that once. It is still true." A beat of silence. "Yes," Drake answered. "The remote can only detonate after the circuits are switched live from the base controls. There is an access platform under Tower 6. Why?" Because if anyone is arming those charges, it is going to be me. I am the only one on this line you can expend without gutting the watch, I cut in. And I am the only one who will not flinch when it comes time to tell the truth about what you did here. The line hissed. For a second I thought he had cut me off. Below, one of the constructs wedged a mangled torso into a crack and used it as a step. Unless you want to send a random tech, I added. Tell his squad you fed him into a demolition rig while you stayed upstairs with a tablet. That is enough, Drake muttered. You do not get to judge this from a pulpit. The pulpit is on the wall, I answered. You are the one in the warm room, remember? Another pause, then, harshly, fine. Tower 6 access, lower maintenance hatch. Platform has the arm console. You get down there, you flip the arming sequence exactly as the guide tells you, and you get off before I trigger it. Understood. One more thing. His voice steadied. Do not improvise. Those charges will drop the whole sector clean. That is the only way this works. Sure, I lied. He cut the channel. Haz had been listening on the local net. He lowered his rifle just long enough to throw me a glare. You are not going down there alone. You are busy, I pointed out. Those things are still climbing. Screw that, he snapped. You fall off that platform. Who is going to tell the story? Drake? His voice cracked on the last word, not from fear of heights, from the other thing. This is not a debate, I told him. You hold this parapet. You keep them from reaching the top. That is your job. And yours? I checked my harness, fingers moving on muscle memory. To rig a miracle. Or at least a better disaster. He stared a heartbeat more, then jerked his chin. You come back. No promises. I clapped his shoulder and ran for the inner hatch. The corridor down to the maintenance level was narrow and steep, built with the assumption that only a handful of engineers would ever use it at a time. The wall shook around me as I descended. Dust trickled from seams. Somewhere metal screamed in a long, rising line as something outside tore at a brace. I took the ladder rungs 2 at a time until my arms burned, then dropped the last short distance to the maintenance deck. Tower 6 access hatch gaped ahead, bulkhead painted with cheerful diagrams of harness use and emergency procedures. Someone long ago had added a small metal plate under them, engraved with the rule, "We do not look over the edge." I thumbed the hatch controls and it rolled aside. Beyond lay the access tunnel, a low, cramped tube that sloped down toward the outer skin. Safety rails ran along both sides, cables and conduit along the ceiling. At the far end, open to black, I could see the faint outline of the overedge platform. A square of steel bolted under the parapet, supported by braces driven into the cliff. Wind hissed through the gap, cold enough to sting exposed skin. The sound carried another note under it, the low grind of constructs climbing, closer now, almost directly beneath. I clipped my harness to the tunnel rail and started down. Halfway along, my comm pinged. Padre. Haz, of course. You are supposed to be shooting things, I grunted. I split the squad, he replied. Half on the line, half with me. With you where? Behind me, boots thudded on the ladder. 2 shapes dropped into the tunnel and jogged to catch up. Haz in the lead, one of his troopers behind, both clipped onto the same rail. You are not subtle, I muttered. You are not either, he shot back. You think I am letting you near an overedge platform unsupervised. This is not a field trip. Good, because the snacks are terrible. He brushed past me so he could take point. As much as I wanted to order him back, a selfish part of me was relieved. Someone else to hold the line down there. Someone to drag my carcass back if the harness did not do its job. We reached the mouth of the tunnel. The overedge platform hung beyond, a square maybe 3 meters across, bolted to the wall with thick brackets. A waist-high rail ran around its outer edge. A single control column stood near the inner side, topped with a weather-beaten console and a pair of keyed switches. Underneath, nothing. Just a long drop into the dark, and the shapes that crawled up out of it. I stepped out onto the platform. Wind knifed around my legs. The steel under my boots vibrated. Each tremor matched the construct's motions as they climbed. Haz came out beside me, his trooper hanging back in the tunnel to cover with a rifle. The trooper's hands shook a little. Mine, too. "Do not look down," Haz offered. I looked down. The constructs were directly below us. From this angle, the scale was obscene. A cluster of them clung to the wall, overlapping and intertwined. Some had lost limbs and torsos under the gunfire from above and below. Their broken pieces did not fall away. The mass had wedged them into cracks and ledges instead, using them as steps and braces. The effect was a kind of frozen ladder made from scrap and bodies. A ribcage here, a half-melted wheel there, an arm bent sideways to fit a gap. Some of the human faces I had glimpsed earlier now stared blindly outward from within that crude scaffolding, mouths open, teeth bared by frozen tension. One of the larger constructs moved at the center of the cluster. It was less defined than the others, more like a mound of plates and tissue cords knotted together. When it reached up, smaller units around it shifted to open space for its limbs, then closed again behind, locking it in place. They were building a path with themselves, turning every piece of damage into leverage. Heat shimmered around their contact plates. Where they touched the wall, the cryo-steel bulged and sagged, refreezing in warped shapes that gave the next climber better purchase. The chemical readings up here were stronger. Burnt metal for sure, but also something sweet and wrong carried on the updraft, like fat gone bad in a kitchen after a fire. The taste bled through my filters and stayed there. "Lovely," Haz muttered. "Really glad I came." "Arm console," I reminded myself aloud. "Focus." I crossed to the column. The console was old but familiar. Simple switches and a small screen in a metal frame that had seen too much weather. On the panel, someone had stenciled Temple Wall Local Control. Under that, in smaller letters, Authorized Use Only. I slotted my station card into the reader and hit the wake switch. The screen came alive with a crude diagram of our wall sector viewed from above. A long bar represented the wall. Triangles lined its base at regular intervals, each one a charge. Lines marked structural braces running from wall into cliff. Standard sequence highlighted in yellow. Inner braces first, then base charges, dropping the section straight down. Beneath the diagram, a text prompt waited. Enter armed segment range. "Commander, I am on the platform," I reported. "Console is live." "Copy," Drake replied. "You armed charges from Tower 5 to Tower 8 only. That drops the active segment and leaves the rest intact. Orbital is ready to detonate on my mark once you confirm." I watched the constructs move. The bulk of them were clustered under our stretch between those towers. But chunks of broken wall had already started to create shelves along the cliff face farther out. If we dropped the segment as designed, we would take a lot of them with us. We would also leave a smooth new scar on the cliff, maybe closer to the colony's level, for whatever survived to climb. "Copy," I told him. My thumb hovered over the input keys. I had been an infantry officer once. I had learned how to read demolition schematics, how to set breaches in buildings so they fell away from civilians instead of into them. Simple rule. Change the order of force, you change the way things break. If I triggered the outer anchors first instead of the inner braces, the charges might kick the section of wall outward a little before gravity took over. Out and down, away from the cliff, not straight down along it. We would lose more of the wall. The platform under my boots might go with it. But the constructs would go too, along with the twisted path they were building. "Gabe!" Drake's voice cut in, using my given name for the first time in a long while. "We are out of time. They are almost at the parapet. Arm the charges and get clear." "I am arming them," I answered. I keyed in the tower range he had given me. Triangles along that stretch glowed green on the diagram. Then quietly, I altered the sequence. Inner braces, delay 2 seconds. Outer anchors, detonate first. Base charges, staggered, not simultaneous, to twist the wall as it fell. The console did not care. It was a dumb system. It did what the authorized user told it, as long as the numbers added up. Authorized use only. I set the last parameter and thumbed the confirm key. A new line flashed. Local segment armed. Await remote trigger. Charges are armed, I reported. You have your lever, Commander. Understood. Drake sounded almost relieved. Get off that platform, all of you. Now. On it. I yanked my card from the reader and turned. The constructs had noticed us. One of the larger units shifted its weight and reached up. Its nearest arm swept toward the underside of the platform, fingers extended. The contact plates glowed as they closed. Back! I shouted. Haz already had his rifle raised. He emptied a burst into the limb as it rose, rounds punching into corded tissue and metal. Chunks flew, some bouncing off the wall, others tumbling into the dark. The hand did not stop. It slammed against the underside of the platform. Heat surged through the steel. The deck under my boots flexed. The vibration was like being inside a drum someone had just hit. I stumbled, caught myself on the console. Behind me, the trooper in the tunnel fired past our shoulders, shots tight and controlled. The constructs below shrugged off the hits the way a tank shrugs off gravel. Gabe. Drake snapped in my ear. Get out of there. We are triggering in 10. Do not trigger, I barked. Not yet. If you drop now, the charges fire while their hand is locked to the platform, I argued fast. They will twist the wall in ways your models did not account for. Give me 15 seconds to get this thing off us or you might rip the wrong segment. Silence. Then, grudgingly, you have 15. After that, I pull. The hand on the underside of the platform pressed harder. The deck buckled up in a soft curve. The contact plates brightened, bringing back that smell. Thicker now, like whatever powered those plates had charred more than metal. I looked at the console. If the outer anchors went while we were still attached, the whole platform might shear off and tumble with the wall. I trusted my harness, but not that much. There was a manual release lever at hip height, marked with chipped paint. Platform anchor reset. It was meant to retract the platform slightly for maintenance. I did not know what it would do under this kind of stress. Gabe, Haz growled. Pick a bad idea and do it. I slung my rifle, grabbed the lever with both hands and hauled. It barely moved. The metal under my boots creaked. The hand below pushed harder. The lever resisted like it was set in stone. I braced one foot against the console base and leaned my weight into it. The lever gave a centimeter, then another. With a sudden jolt, the platform lurched upward and in toward the wall as the anchors cycled. The movement broke the contact enough that the construct's fingers slipped to one side. The glowing plates scraped along the underside, leaving 3 fresh gouges. I lost my footing and went down hard. Instinct threw my hand out to catch myself. My palm landed on the patch of steel the plates had just scorched. Pain blew through my arm in a white rush. For a heartbeat, I did not feel my fingers. Then I felt everything. The heat melted through my glove, biting into skin and muscle straight into the bones. My hand stuck to the metal, flesh searing. I wrenched it up with a shout. Thin strips of skin tore, leaving something behind. When vision cleared, I saw it. On the deck beside the 3 long, fresh grooves from the construct's fingers, my own palm had left a dark, 5-fingered shadow of fused glove material seared onto the steel, almost touching, human and not, pressed into the same patch of metal. Gabe. Haz grabbed my harness. We are done. Back. Now. I staggered toward the tunnel. Behind us, the construct reoriented. Its hand rose again, slower this time. It wanted another grip on its new toy. In my ear, Drake's voice cut through everything. Time is up, he muttered. We are triggering. Do it, I rasped. The world snapped. A sharp crack tore through the wall, so loud it seemed to shove the breath out of my chest. For a fraction of a second, everything froze. Then the outer braces blew. From the tunnel, I saw it through the gap. Charges along the outer anchors flared, blasting chunks of metal and ice outward. The whole section of wall beneath us kicked away from the cliff like a door slammed open from inside. The platform lurched under our feet. My harness line yanked tight, slamming me against the tunnel threshold. Haz's trooper lost footing and swung out over the gap, tether stretched taut, legs pinwheeling as the wall dropped away under him. Haz lunged, grabbed the man's harness with both hands, and hauled. Muscles bunched under his armor. The second wave of charges went off along the base. The wall segment we had armed tore free in a jagged line. For an instant it hung, tilted outward, then gravity finished the job. It fell, taking the platform, the wrecked braces, and the cluster of constructs with it. Through the tunnel mouth I saw the mass peeling away from the cliff, slabs of metal and ice separating. The constructs tried to adjust. Limbs flailed, seeking new holds. The ladder of bodies they had built broke under its own weight. Some units lost purchase and were crushed between sliding plates. Others rode the collapsing section down, carried away from the cliff as my altered sequence fired. It did not fall clean. Nothing ever does. Some fragments of wall scraped along the cliff, shaving off smaller shelves and sending showers of rubble cascading. But the main mass rolled outward, away from the rock face, tumbling into the darkness. The vibrations under my body changed from a steady rhythm to chaotic shudders. Then slowly, they faded. In my helmet, the general channel erupted with overlapping reports. Tower officers shouting about structural cracks, maintenance teams yelling about pressure changes in the braces that remained, medics calling for litters. I lay on my back in the tunnel, chest heaving, burnt hand cradled against my armor. Every beat of my heart pumped pain through it. Haz crouched over me, face pale behind his visor. "You crazy bastard," he breathed. "You kicked the whole wall out from under them." "Not the whole wall," I managed. "Just enough." Behind him, the trooper he had hauled in sat against the bulkhead, shaking as adrenaline dumped out of his system. On the command frequency, Drake's voice cut through the noise. "All units, report," he ordered. "Temple wall segment has dropped. Outer contact density reduced by... Stand by. Reduced significantly. Remaining constructs are below critical height. Repeat, they are below threshold." Another voice, clipped and unfamiliar, spoke on a separate channel patched in from orbit. "Station Command, this is Fleet Oversight," it announced. "We have telemetry on your segment drop. That sequence is not standard. What did you do down there?" Drake answered without missing a beat. "We adapted, sir. Local conditions required a modified vector to prevent the segment from shearing straight down along the cliff. My chaplain took manual control." "Your chaplain?" "Yes." There was a pause. "Your losses?" the fleet officer pressed. Drake glanced, I knew, at whatever casualty lists were already scrolling past his eyes. When he spoke again, his voice had a rough edge. "Fewer than projected for a clean drop," he replied. "We still have most of our towers. We still have a garrison." "We still have you," I muttered. Haz snorted, halfway to laughter. The fleet officer went on. "We will review your data with the engineers. For now, maintain current positions and prepare a detailed report. Containment status. Construct mass beneath Sector 7 has been severely degraded," Drake answered. "Residual units are pinned under rubble or below line of climb. Risk to the colony has dropped. I recommend immediate transmission of full threat profile to all civilian channels before they send more workers out onto that ice, thinking it is just smuggling." The last part was not in any script. He was leveraging the moment while someone important listened. Another pause. Longer. "Recommendation acknowledged. We will prepare a public advisory. Send your chaplain's logs with your report. Oversight out." The channel clicked off. Haz helped me sit up. "You hear that?" he asked. "They want your logs." "Of course they do," I muttered. "They always want a nice narrative." "You going to give them one?" "Yes," I said, "but not the one they expect." They took my burned hand in Medbay 1. The damage ran deeper than the medics could patch. The contact plates had cooked the tissue straight through. Bones in the palm were cracked and charred. The surgeon explained options in simple terms. I barely listened. I looked at my hand, fingers swollen and blistered, and thought about the print it had left next to the constructs on the platform. When I woke from the procedure, my bandaged forearm ended just past the wrist. Pain meds blurred the edges of the next few hours. I caught fragments, reports of minor collapses along the inner corridors, a list of dead and missing from the fallen segment. Haz's face swimming into view, eyes rimmed red from exhaustion and smoke. "You did it," he murmured. "They are talking about you like you are some kind of lunatic saint." "Please do not canonize me," I told him. "I would be terrible at relics." He huffed a laugh and lowered himself into the seat beside the bed. "The constructs?" I asked. "Most of what was climbing went down with the section. There are still some shapes moving deeper in the dark, but they are slower now. Broken. Drake has patrol cameras sweeping the new drop constantly. And the colony? Got a burst from Fleet," he replied. "Public advisory. Full disclosure. No more smuggler story. They are telling people what is under their feet." The wave of relief that hit me then was almost worse than the pain. For the first time since I came to this wall, the people living behind it would not be left in the dark. "There is more," Haz added. Of course there was. "Go on," I muttered. "We pulled the platform. What is left of it? Maintenance dragged it up with cranes. It is a mess, but the console still works. They mounted it in the chapel." I blinked. "Why?" "As a reminder," they said, "of what was on the other side, and of the choice someone made when they armed those charges. I am not sure I like being decor. You get used to it." He smiled faintly. "Also," he added, "the print stayed." "The what?" "Your hand," he answered. "That mark you left when you got yourself half-cooked. It is burned in right next to the construct grooves. Steel around it warped, but those impressions are still clear." He leaned back, eyes closing for a moment. "They put the old rule plate above it," he murmured. "The one about not looking over the edge. No one has scratched it off yet, but the wall around it feels different." "How so?" He shrugged. "You will have to see." I saw it a week later. I walked to the chapel slow, learning my balance again with one hand missing. The corridors bore scars from the drop, patches over cracked seams, new braces bolted across old ones. The whole station felt like a man who had survived surgery and was still figuring out what parts of himself hurt. Inside the chapel, the heater hummed. The benches were fuller than usual. People spoke in low voices, glancing at the front where the altar had once stood alone. Now the chunk of platform sat there too. Maintenance had cut it down, trimming away twisted edges and reinforcing the underside with fresh beams. The console column rose from the back of the slab like a stubby tree trunk. The control screen was dark. Someone had draped a strip of cloth over it, the way you cover a religious icon when you are not using it. The steel surface in front of the console was bare, except for 2 sets of marks burned into it. On the left, 3 long grooves arced in a shallow curve. You could see where the construct's contact plates had pressed, each depression wide enough to lay a forearm in. On the right, overlapping slightly, a 5-fingered outline of fused polymer charred onto the metal. The fingers spread, thumb braced, like someone had reached out to catch themselves. The memorial plate from Soon's time had been moved. It hung above the platform now, at eye level. Under the engraved names from the last wall drop, someone had added a new line in smaller letters. "We do not look over the edge." Someone had to. It was not regulation wording. I had not written it. I could guess who had. Drake stood off to one side, arms folded. When he saw me, he gave a small nod. "Fleet approved a revised protocol," he murmured as I stepped up to the platform. "No more blind drops. Local command gets a voice on sequence. Chaplain must sign off on risk assessment before any charges are armed." "You must be thrilled," I muttered. "More paperwork." "More eyes," he corrected, "including yours." We stood in silence a moment, looking at the prints. "They will build more constructs," he went on. "Somewhere else, another day. Or they will forget and dig up different sins. We did not fix the instinct that made this wall. We only survived it once." Survival is a start, I answered. He glanced at my bandaged stump. You lost enough, he observed. I lost less than I did last time I followed orders, I replied. He took that in, then nodded once. Rafi thinks you are a hero. You might try not to prove him wrong. I will do my best disappointment work, I told him. He snorted and slipped out, leaving me with the platform and the people who had come to see it. I reached out with my remaining hand and hovered over the burned print. The metal was cool now, but the shape of my fingers fit perfectly into the charred grooves. Memory filled in the heat, the pain, the instant when I had pressed down without thinking and left something that would outlive me. Beside my hand, the 3 wider grooves from the construct gaped like a challenge. Human hand, inhuman hand. Both burned into the same piece of steel, both tied to a choice about who to save and how. I thought of Elimsoon's last entry. No order is holy just because men wrote it on metal. The rule above the platform was written on metal too. It still served a purpose. People who did not need to look down should not. Most of them would shatter if they saw what moved in the dark. But someone had to look. Someone had to stand on the edge and decide which way the wall fell. I am not a hero, I murmured under my breath, more to the metal than to anyone living. I am just the idiot who touched the hot stove. A few of the troops nearby glanced over, smiling faintly. They thought I was joking. Maybe I was. Maybe I was not. I laid my palm flat over the old print, fitting my hand to my own scar, and let my fingers spread until they almost brushed the first groove from the construct's grip. Cold steel under my skin, quiet ring of voices behind me, the distant, constant weight of the wall. Out beyond the parapet, the dark side of the moon kept its secrets. On the ice wall, we did not look over the edge. But now at least we knew what climbed there, and that knowledge had a handprint of its own.